We are just checking some more operable controls. So some more operable controls in which we will be seeing this slider, tabs, date picker, tree view, and finally the scroll bar. So I think we have used this all here and there. We have seen all this slide. So generally date picker, whenever we are filling some form and when we need to enter the date picker will be there. So that control will pop up and you can uh, set your date and you can enter your date, right? So this will just go through. Starting with the slider, they are giving this is the slider and accordingly that they are setting the temperature, right? So on whatever the point it will take that particular bar, I mean which is called as a arm, uh, that particular value it will get selected. So you can move this arm also, or you can use this button also, through which you can increase the temperature or decrease the temperature setting, right? I mean you can set the scale. Instead of saying temperature scale setting, we can say you can set the scale. So by using these buttons also you can set the scale, and this is actually the scale with all the measurements, right? This is the measurement. So on this scale or on this shaft, we have this arm which will be working as for setting the measurements, right? So this is the slider. So now going back to the description, a scale exhibiting degrees of quantity of quality on the continuum. So we can set some measurement actually on the on that particular scale. So which includes what? It includes a shaft bar. We have seen the shaft bar on which the actual scale, and then a range of values with appropriate labels. So if you same as scale, right? These are the range of values with the appropriate order. So you can see it is a measurement of 10. So all with the measurement of, I mean, difference of 10, it is properly uh, uh, assigned. So range of values with appropriate labels, a arm indicating relative setting through its location on the shaft. And what are the optional? A pair of buttons. So pair of buttons are the optional because it's not as that's what in the word we won't see that pair of buttons, but these are the optional. A text box where down there is a text box, right? Where this whatever the values are set, this text box where 71 is displayed. This is also optional, and at the same time, a detained position for the special values. If you wanted to set any special values by default values, then you can use this detained position. This is also optional. So mostly which is required is only the shaft, this arm, and this labels, right? These are the, so we have seen what and all should be there. Maybe oriented vertically or horizontally. Vertical is also there in the word we have seen, and horizontally also it's there. Selected by using the mouse to drag the slider across the scale until the desired value is reached. Point at the buttons at the one end of the scale and clicking to change the values, and keying a value in the associated text box. So you can, how you can enter the value in the slider. Either you can use mouse and you can drag this arm, or you can use these buttons and you can increase or decrease the values and you can do the setting as per your requirement, or directly you can input the value into this text box, right? So there are three ways through which you can set the values, but as they have said, the buttons and this text box is the optional. Okay, this is the minimum requirement: shaft, arm, and the labels with the measurements, that is the scale, actual scale. These are the mandatory parts of that slider. So you can input the values accordingly. We have seen the description. What is the purpose? To make the setting when a continuous qualitative adjustment is acceptable, it is useful to see the current value relative to the range of positive values. So based on the application, you can use the slider. Advantages: a spatial representation of the relative setting, visually distinctive. Spatial representative of the relative setting because you can see what exactly the settings are happening. You have that relativity you can make out when you are moving it. Now you can make out the relativity. The way I have shown in the word example, I can see the relatively where the position will start. When I was here also, if I'll take all this together at a time and I wanted to start all together at some particular places, I can see where it is moving, where exactly, from where exactly it is starting, right? So that clear visual appearance I can make out when I'm doing this, right? The spatial relativity I can make out, the relativity from the uh, left side, from the right side, I can make out this. So that is the help, that is the usefulness of this or advantages of this. Disadvantages: not as precise as alphanumeric indication, consumes a screen space where you are putting on the with respect to that, definitely, because that much scale you need to put into your screen space, so it will consume a screen space, and usually more complex than the other controls. So this is from the development point of view. When you are programming it, you may have to set many uh, attributes with respect to this, so it will be little more complex than other kinds of controls. Proper uses: to set an attribute for mutually exclusive choices when the object has limited range of possible settings, right? So here the range of setting is not very big. There is a limited range of possible setting. So that is also one of the disadvantage we can say, but that is also one of the advantage where you required in your application there is a limited range, you better to use for this slider through which we can take a input. So when a range of values is continuous, this is also true. This is continuous, right? The values are continuous. It's not distinct. It is not different values. So values are continuous, and accordingly that you can set it. The graduations are relatively fine. Why they are telling graduations are relatively fine? Because by using that arm, you can gradually you can increase the measurement or the input values, or you can decrease the input values, and accordingly that you can see what difference is occurring, right? So that's why the graduations are relatively fine. When the choices can increase or decrease in some manner, when the spatial representations enhances the comprehensions and the interpretations, and finally when using a slider provides a sufficient accuracy. So all these are the uses. If this kind of users are matching with your applications, go for a slider. So we have seen the figure. In this, what we have to just see: scale, captions, labels, right? Slider arm, slider buttons, details, and proportions. So these are the seven things which we need to see. Scale is this scale. This is one component, right? Show complete range of choices. Here the choices is given from 0 to 120. So they know that the temperature is not going above 120, and it's not necessary to show below 0. As per their application, they are showing from 0 to 120. That is in Fahrenheit, right? So that much scale only they are using. It is not necessary, even if it is in your particular application, if never the values will go below 0 or never the values will go above 120, then never include that measurements in your scale, right? So that's why it is shown from 0 to 120. Mark the low, intermediate and high ends of the scale. So that is also they have marked. So it should be marked from the low end and the high end and the middle one also. So provide the scale interval markings wherever possible. So markings are also given this, right? Generally when we'll draw something, we'll see that all these markings should be there, which is of exactly 1 unit scale, right? So this is with respect to scale. The way scale looks, the same way we should draw it, the same way we should project it in our application also. Then the caption, provide meaningful, clear, consistent caption, right? So here the captions are not given in this figure, but we can say this temperature and Fahrenheit is the caption, right? The remaining this shaft, arm, detain, buttons, scale, text box, all this is just for our purpose to understand. This is just for study purpose they have included into the figure. But actually when you will add this slider into a application, in any application, you will be not having, you will be not including all this, right? So here caption is only the temperature and the unit of that, that is Fahrenheit, right? So the caption, provide meaningful, clear, consistent caption, display them using a mixed case letters, position the captions to the left of the box. Alternatively, it may be positioned left justified above the slider. So it can be above the slider, left justified. So it can be over here also. Okay. Then labels, provide meaningful and distinctive labels to aid in the interpreting the scale. Slider arm, if one user cannot change the value shown in the slider, do not display a slider arm. That means through slider arm, if you are not going to, or user are not going to change the values, then don't include the slider arm itself. Okay, so it's only possible, if it is only possible to include from the buttons or through a keyboard and not through a arm, then don't include the arm. Caption detains values that have special meaning and permit the user to change the detained values also. So you can change the default values also through the detained one. Proportion, to indicate the proportion of the value being displayed, fill the slider arm in small way. Fill the horizontal sliders from left to right. Fill the vertical sliders from bottom to top. So this is all with respect to the components what they are telling. Even though if you are increasing through this, so now if you wanted to move this slider, I mean this arm through a buttons, if it is set to 10 and you wanted to increase from 10 to 20, so directly you are increasing by 1 unit or you are increasing by zero point 0.1 unit. That means 10 to 10.1, 10.1 to 10.2, 10.2 to 10.3, like this from zero point 0.1 unit, or directly you are increasing by 1 unit. That means from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40. So how it should increase, it's all should be programmed through these buttons. So whenever the user is increasing the value or decreasing the value through a buttons, then in that case how much increment should happen, that should be programmed through these buttons, right? Same way here, whatever the values will be entered, that will be taken. But if the value will be taken as 130, then what to do? Because 130 is not there in the slider, then that kind of exception should be taken care. If this value is entered as minus 10 or minus 50, then how it should be taken care? Huh? So all these, those will be exceptions. So that all should be taken care through our programming, right? At the same time, this arm also they are saying detain. So this detain is nothing but by default this will be the value shown if nothing is selected. That is the special meaning it has. But you can allow user to change that detained also. At the same time they are saying, like whenever you are setting some value, then you should show that visually, it should show it, right, that the setting is happening, or that visual appearance, your cursor is, I mean, your arm is moving from this side to this side. So proportionally, that should be clear. So this is with respect to slider.